Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the 60th episode of the Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. And when we first started this thing, I would never believe we would actually end up doing 60 episodes of this. And it doesn't seem like it was that long ago we did the first one.
It sure flies by, don't it? Like that
It's
first 60
amazing
minutes.
how time goes. Of course, today, Amy reminded me, she's, well, now what do you want to, you need any notes or anything for your episodes? And then, oh, geez, that's right. I thought we just did that last week, but it was 2 weeks ago. So the time has definitely flown by. A lot of racing going on. Boone finally got in. No rain this weekend down here. That was pretty exciting. You guys lost tonight. You were up at 141 last week. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was another awesome week at 141. Other than when they were freaking out that the tornadoes were coming at us, and we were all a little on edge and didn't know what was going to happen. We're all out there pretty vulnerable in the campers and the race trailers and whatever. But the storm hit Lake Winnebago and kind of fizzled out, so that was pretty cool. But no, it was a good show. They did it in one day, and they adapted, and they were going to cut the pay. I'm glad they didn't do that and found a way to find enough money in a one-day gig to keep it 10,000 a win. The guys that traveled from a long ways away deserve the chance to run for that. They came all the way up there, so. But they made the best of it. As always, the racetrack, I mean, it's a racy little place. It once again had an awesome show. So congratulations to Johnny Whitman and Ryan Rosenau and the boys for 2 in a row. That's a pretty awesome accomplishment. The car count, I think it was at 70 or 75. Still a pretty solid group of guys there. Some pretty heavy hitters. But it's an awesome track. I love going over there. I missed last year because that was when my son got hurt and I couldn't go. And so it's great to get back over there and see the people. And we did some work, updated some machines, and just trying to improve our product. And we actually got a couple of the new Gen 4 machines that we dropped off there for guys to test for the next month or so. We're working the bugs out of that new graphing manual machine, Ultraforce. So we're excited about where that's going. We've had some touchscreen issues getting touchscreens, so we're going to convert our Gen 3 manual to the bigger touchscreen. So actually be good for the whole evolution. So you can, as an entry-level racer with an Ultraforce machine now, you'll be able to buy one machine of the same screen, and then we can update you to the new graphing one. So with the same machine. So as you evolve your career, hopefully you keep the same machine. The frameworks are built so good that they're going to last you for probably the rest of your career. So did a lot of work on that. So it was good to get over there and get some use on that Gen 4 and see where we need to go with that to make it better.
Awesome. Oh, that sounds all pretty cool. We had a lot of people let us know some congratulations to some of the RTI attendees from last year. Roy Stanley with another win. Alex Crawford picked up his 4th win of the year. Dale Cake the third having a great year. He's got 3 wins and 3 runner-up finishes. Tim Shepard got his first win of the year, and these are all guys. And Jacob Elthrope, win number 4. These are all guys who were out there in Pennsylvania, the RTI school in Pennsylvania. So nice to see those guys are all running really good. Of course, we had quite a few around here locally, and Amy will publish those tomorrow on Trophy Tuesdays. And so that was been an exciting weekend all the way around. Jake McBurney got his first win this season at Boone. This is that Saturday night, and of course the 11R, my highly qualified shock assistant, Bobby's assistant, I should say, won the sport mod. Braden Richards won the sport mod division in the 11R. So we had a good weekend at Boone, and so it was always exciting. I didn't actually go this weekend. Somehow or other, I come up with the brilliant idea to stay home and watch the truck race. And it wasn't as big of a damage control thing as it was Uh, Brett Moffitt stayed out on stage 2 and started on the front row and jumped the start, so they black flagged him. Otherwise, he was leading when they black flagged him. So that was kind of a bummer, but part of the deal.
I got a cool picture from there. The one of the truck teams, my buddy bought a mud scraper. He was using it on the truck series there, so that was pretty cool to
Oh, cool.
see some dirt parts transfer over to NASCAR. So
Yeah, well, they definitely needed it Saturday night. They had mud everywhere.
yeah,
I felt for those guys. The one that the KBM guys, they had an ingenious deal that they learned actually from the Cup guys at Bristol. Their screens, instead of having a flat screen in front of the radiator, in front of the grill opening, they had a bowed one, so it was out. Well, and they weren't having any heating problems or any. Actually, the mud wasn't even sticking to it because it was rounded, so it wasn't sticking to it. That was pretty ingenious. So for me, I kind of always like those type of things. Where I'm like, way to go, guys! You got this. You're getting this dirt. They'll figure it out after all.
we used to build our airboxes like that on the asphalt cars, the front screen, because in the fall you'd get a lot of leaves on the racetrack. Well, then they'd plug the grill up, and same thing like the mud, plug the grill, the car would overheat. So we'd build that box back in like 2 inches so that air would go up over the top of the blockage. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what they were doing. The air would either go above or below, but then it was open on the side, so it could still suck air in. And it
Yeah.
was, I thought those guys did it was a pretty awesome job. Like I said, I thought it was fun just watching the evolution of what they were doing on some of the dirt stuff. So that
Yeah.
was pretty cool. Well, I suppose I better get to some questions here. Uh, Paul, I'm seeing Northern Sport modified pull bar. How long? How long is too long? And what do you recommend for a tight quarter mile racetrack, medium high bank track? Well, I still like that 28-inch bar, to be honest with you. Somewhere in that 28 to 30-inch range, I think is real neutral. It works real well. Sometimes I think if you get too long, it can make the car, I know there's been guys that have tried multiple different things with that. But with that solid bar, I think sometimes you get too long and it just, I just don't know if it's as effective. I haven't tried a lot of stuff, and we played with some 36-inch stuff, and I thought it just made the car feel lazy. We tried 24s and 20-inch stuff, and I thought it made the car too erratic. So we kind of settled in that 28 to 30-inch range and seemed to be pretty good. And I think that would work very well on a medium high bank racetrack. I mean, I think that's a very good all around spot. Ryan, starting spring rates for an A mod on a 3/8 mile fairgrounds racetrack. Dirty heat races, slick rubber feature. Don't have a great relationship with my chassis builder. Pair of 450s across the front now, 100 left rear and a 250 right rear. Um, I don't think that pair of 450s is that bad. It just kind of depends on, like if you're running the Pinto spindles, that's probably going to be a little soft. If you're running the 3-piece spindles, I think that's pretty good. A lot of times we run a pair of 500s. I think the 500s and 450s can be on the verge of a little soft. Sometimes we'll run the 450 on the right front with a 500 on the left front if we feel that the racetrack's got to be a little bit tighter on the right rear. We'll soften the right front up to get it over on the right front, which when you get it over on the right front, then it gets the left rear up in the air, and it also gets more side bite on the right rear. So it kind of helps the car turn getting in, but seems to get you rod angle to get you up off the corner coming off works pretty good. 100 and that 250, that's pretty good. We've got some guys that are playing with an 80-pound spring. A lot of times we run a 125 left rear. 100 works pretty good. I think you're right in the ballpark. I mean, I don't. What's your suggestions, Chad?
It's pretty solid, I think.
Okay, Mario. Hi guys. The rear shock coilover eliminators on the birdcage should be at the same level or one side lower than the other. What would you recommend for the correct measurements or the holes on the Weir's birdcage?
So I'd like to see the left rear behind be at 7-inch drop and the right rear at a 6-inch drop. If you're at a shorter track, we'd probably move that left rear up to get it into the corner and let it turn a little bit quicker. But generally, I think most cars are starting at 7-inch left rear, 6-inch drop right rear.
Yeah, that's where our stuff is at. That seems to be pretty common, or it works really well for us. Ryan, also, what's the best way to get involved with the industry? Would you like to work for a car builder, or specifically in the modifieds? Well, Ryan, I'll tell you what, there's not a shortage of jobs out here. Believe me. I mean, I don't think there's a chassis builder that I know that's not looking for some help. I mean, we're actually looking for some skilled help. I've had some opportunities on some guys that I think would have the potential to be, long term pretty decent. The problem is it's a lot of work. You get into a deal where you start repairing a car or whatever. It's pretty dirty, grinding, gritty work. It's not always what you call working for a chassis builder like you might think it might be. It's not a bed of roses type of career. The pay is pretty decent in our industry, I think, or I feel. Like I said, I'm looking for another guy that's got a lot of experience. Rocky and Aiden are doing a great job, but I was telling Chad earlier, we've got more work than what we can actually produce right now, just because those guys they can't work any harder than they're working. I mean, they're busting their butt, and they were still there today when I left because they're putting a stub on a car, and the car owner comes over every day to see how we're doing on it to make sure we're still working on it, and so they're feeling the crunch. But yeah, there's a lot of people looking for help. There's not a shortage of jobs by all means. What would you say on how to get involved, Chad?
Yeah, I don't know where you're from, Ryan, but like Bob said, the chassis builders that we do business with that are looking for guys to weld and assemble cars. And if you know how to weld, you can come in and start building bumpers and building sheet metal skills. And there's no better place to learn the industry than getting into the industry and working for somebody. I mean, if you have some basic skills mechanically, and even if you wanted to move to Bangor here and run parts, we're always looking for people. And I'd say it's a special industry because you need to kind of have a passion for racing to be involved and understand why we do what we do. And but it's a great industry. I mean, I've been in it my entire life, and I've done well, and I've got a lot of great people here that do a great job for me. And but you're always looking for more people for sure. The skilled worker is gone by the wayside, and it's at the high school level. And I think we beat this up about a year ago or whatever on the show, but I mean, people just don't they get so much pressure to go to a 4-year school and try and be that guy that sits at a computer. But you got to have the skilled, the electrician, the plumber, the fabricator, and the machinist. We're kind of a dying breed, and it's because they've taken the glamour out of it. And my guys make pretty decent money. I know plumbers are making good money, electrician. I mean, you can go anywhere and have a good career by going to a 2-year college. So it's scary, being a business owner, as I know that you and I have talked, what we're going to see in 5 years as far as the talent pool of fabricators and machinists. But Ryan, if you're at all interested, I would dive in there with both feet and just do a good job. The biggest thing is you got to show up every day. That's seems to
Yeah.
be, you know.
Show up and be willing to work the whole day, and some of that kind of stuff, the basics. But yeah, it's like I said, there's always plenty of work in this industry. There's no doubt about it. Okay, Ryan, Sport Mod, just a little tight on the throttle. What's your go-to adjustment? If it's a little tight on the throttle, you can put some trail in the car. That's probably going to be my go-to. It depends on when you say a little tight, because you could, raise the right trailing arm, put a little more angle in the right trailing arm. The problem with that is it's going to probably free you up a little bit more on corner entry. So if you feel that you can be a little freer on corner entry, that would be what my recommendation would be, is probably increasing the angle in that right rear trailing arm some, or putting some trail in that side. That would be my two go-to things. Garrett, what do you recommend for a sipe depth on a modified Wasota Hoosier? Man, Garrett, I'm really sorry. I am not the guy to ask about that. I know some basic tire stuff, enough to work with the IMCA type stuff and the American Racer type tire, but I'm not that familiar with that Wasota Hoosier tire. Your best bet's going to be talking to one of those racers that do a good job, that's not a competitor of yours, that's willing to, give you some guidance. Those guys will help you. Yeah, I wished I could answer that question, but I apologize, I can't. Matt, can you explain to me why a soft spring on the left rear of a Northern Sport Mod is a bad thing? I get that it's not on a slider and the spring may fade faster. I would think having it on the spring versus having it floated back there. And I understand that it's all of that factor. If a guy is a really good trail breaker where you can keep that thing up on the bar, I don't think it makes a lot of difference what spring rate you actually have in that left rear, to be honest with you. If you're one of those guys that has a little trouble with keeping it up on the, keeping it up on angle of that bar and lets it fall down, then my side of the soft spring is I think it lets the car drop too much, and then it gets the car tight all of a sudden. Or with a stiffer spring, it doesn't drop as much. That's just but when they're both floating, you're correct. It makes no difference what spring rate you have. And I would agree with the fact that having it loaded would definitely make more sense. I just, on our stuff, we've tried it, and I can't say that we were unsuccessful with it, but I couldn't see where we really gained a big advantage over our standard 13-inch 175 that we had, that does end up with some gap. But it all depends, like I said, in your shock builder, it depends on how your driver drives. He's going to have the right shock for that combination of the driver to help. It's the trail braking guy is going to be really good with that soft spring, and it's going to be an advantage for him. The guy that's not as good, I think it could be a hindrance. Just my opinion. Tucker, in your opinion, what's the proper amount of rear steer in a modified M dynamic? 3 inches. We go between 2 3/4 and 3 inches, seems to be that magical point. I don't know. Anytime I've ever tried more than 3 inches, uh, the car just seems to get kind of out of whack, and it makes it do some funky things in the middle of the corner. It gets it to this point where it starts to steer loose, and then it goes tight on you when it loses some of that. The thing that I have found that when you go less than that, the problem sometimes when you go less than that, like I say, if you go to like a 2.5 inch steer, now all of a sudden we're not getting over in the right front like we need to. And so that steer also has a lot to do with how the car gets on the right front. And it's that combination of how much the car gets on the right front versus the amount of steer is that magic combination. You know, your driver might like 2 7/8 might be his magical point, but there's a magic for the driver and the car combination. There's that number is a magic number. But in answer to your question, you know, we're right at 3 inches is where we seem to be on our GRT stuff. Seems to be pretty driver universal. Okay, Matthew, what's a good starting point for a right rear load at ride height on a USRA B mod 3-link? Spring on top of the housing. Well, that's a good question too. I'm not sure I have an answer for you on that one. I don't even know if I'd know how to measure the amount of right rear load you have.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one either.
That's a great question, Matthew. I don't know. I don't know. You know, you could. It's pretty easy to measure it when you're on a limiter, but I mean, the biggest thing is you're just going to measure the height of the free height of your spring, and then measure your compressed height, and multiply that times your pounds per inch, and that's going to tell you what is a good starting point. You know, I mean, 200-pound spring, I would have to believe a good starting point's going to probably be in that 400-pound range. I don't. What would you guess, Chad?
Hard to say. A lot of variables there. I would try and work with your chassis builder and see,
Yeah.
but obviously taking your car and doing the math and figuring out where you are and documenting that in your notebook and then adjusting accordingly is probably a good place to start.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a very good way to put that. Ryan, with an IMC modified on Wehrs cages, what does going up or down on the right rear bottom side of the cage do?
Up, tight, down, loose, off.
Yep. The car, when you go up, the car's actually going to get a little tighter getting in, be a little tighter in the middle, and be tighter off. Definitely what Chad just said is exactly good. Jonathan must think you're an expert on bolts. I heard he must have had a problem with something like that or something.
Yeah, the recommendation for foot-pounds on a 604 rod bolt is tighter than what yours were coming out of the factory. I think he broke rods last week at 141.
Yeah, I heard something about that.
He did a great recovery. Had a good car.
Chris, what's your recommendation on getting more forward drive on an IMCA stock car on a super dry slick racetrack? Well, I hate to say it, but tail percentages on those cars are pretty magical. Running more angle in the right trailing arm, less angle in the right rear, and more on the left rear definitely is going to be the key to traction there. The way the rules state, you can't change it on the front of the front of the trailer arm, but on the rear end you can have, I don't know, I think 3 holes or something to that point. Running that left rear 20-25 degrees of an angle, if you can get that, would be ideal. Putting that right rear, at 5 degrees of angle on a real slick racetrack. And that's going to tighten you up getting in, but those cars tend to be a little bit side bite short to begin with. So having that be a little tighter getting in is definitely going to be tighter coming off. That would be my recommendation is adjusting those trailing arms. Ryan, having a guy I'm helping that's struggling a bit off the corner. I think it's too much gear. Would you gear down to help from breaking loose, or is it a crutch in your opinion? Well,
It's kind
since
of a
Jonathan thinks you're the engine expert, what's your opinion, Chad?
well, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question. There's a lot of variables there. I mean, I've taken gear away in the past to do exactly what you're talking about, and yeah, is it a crutch? Possibly, but maybe there's something else that you're missing there. But you don't think of anything as a crutch. It's a
No.
change, but yeah, I like where you're going with that. Tuning with gear is always something that you're gonna do, all the time, I would say. So I wouldn't think that it would be a crutch, but I guess it would depend on the level of how bad it is. But if you're spinning the tires, taking a little gear away is going to delay the spinning of the tires.
And the thing of it is too, it depends a lot on the racetrack. If you're on like a half mile that's got big old sweeping corners, boy, that'd be the absolute best change you could make.
Yeah.
If you're on a tight quarter-mile racetrack, the problem is if you're tight where you're going to have a tendency to break the tires loose to begin with, then taking gear away from it's going to probably make the tire spin worse. You'd almost be better off putting gear to it, run more RPMs, and have a better chance of not breaking the tires loose. But that's more on a real short stop and go type racetrack. Anything that's got momentum, I would think, and I haven't even had nothing to drink for 3 weeks, man. And I don't have my water. That's the problem. My tongue's getting tied. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, having a guy take gear away from it, that's usually my go-to. But it's got to be more of a momentum type racetrack. Russ, Chad, how would we get a part idea to you?
I would say probably the easiest way is to go through our email. It's wehrsmachine@gmail.com. Sketches, pictures. In our 25 years, we've had a lot of cool people come to us with great ideas. That's, I think one of the things that we do better than anybody else is we give credit to where the idea comes from, and whether it's on a bar napkin after the races, having a cold one, or somebody actually machines the prototype. So we're definitely open to that. Russ, send us what you got going on there, or just give me a call tomorrow. We can talk about it.
Ryan, I watched the Masters at Cedar Lake this weekend, and it looks like a lot of the USMTS cars have a crap ton of chain drop. I'm at 6 inches with 0 indexing on the left rear, and to me it looks like those guys have a lot more. How are those guys getting that huge amount of chain drop but keeping their car in one solid attitude the whole race and not too loose on corner entry?
This the stay in your own notebook thing?
Yeah.
So when we raced, I always built my bodies so that they looked weird. I mean, I'm not saying they don't have more chain drop than you. I'm just saying that tune your own car. Watch the other cars and study the other cars. But just because somebody has a larger gap in their wheel well, if you look at their tire opening sitting there driving through the pits, maybe they got 2 inches more gap than you do. So it's one of them things that pictures can be your friend and pictures can be your enemy. And looking at pictures and looking at race cars going around the track and studying that stuff, I mean, I lived and died by that. But you also have to put it into perspective. So I would tune your car accordingly. 6 inches of chain drops quite a bit. I don't know where you're measuring that. And I would always be careful of, hey, let more chain out, but holy cow, you just steered another inch and a half and destroyed your race car. So again, it's about you and your car and what you feel, and staying in your notebook, and doing what's best for Ryan Smith. So
Todd, please explain what advantages one get by having a brand new chassis versus a 4-year-old one. Has the technology changed that much? Also, what makes one chassis better than the other? Is it the technical service or the engineering? Well, the answer to your last question is by far it's the technical service that you get. Um, you know, I, I mean, myself, I've tried talking to some chassis builders and been on hold for 8 minutes, and I just hung up because it was like I got my time's more valuable than that, and I realize that they're busy because they've got lots of customers too. But and that's the thing you have to consider is you know you take a guy like Justin O'Brien who's got an ungodly amount of chassis. There's only one of him to answer how many phone calls, so you can't get mad at him because he's not giving you the technical support. He's doing everything he possibly can to help everybody in the hours that he has in the day. So you have to keep that in mind. The other thing is and it's the old adage. Some people like to buy something different because, say you go to a racetrack and there's 7 of brand X cars there and there's only 1 of brand B car there or whatever. Well, sometimes having the 7 brand X cars, you can get more technology, and because they're kind of, they're racing against you, but they're still sort of on the same chassis team to the point where their chances of them helping you are going to be better. So, those are things to think about. Buying a brand new car versus a 4-year-old one. Well, it's the old adage. Back when I grew up as a kid on the farm and I didn't have a wire cutters, the only way I could break a wire was to bend it enough times to the point where it finally snapped. Well, you take the the chassis builder, and say you're running 55 shows a year on a big gumbo type tire on a heavier type racetrack, or you're running 3 nights a week, or whatever the case is, eventually you're going to wear that car out. Now, if you're that guy that runs 12 shows, 18 shows, the car that you have can easily be updated, I'm sure, depending on what your chassis builder says, because most generally, I mean, we update a lot of our stuff. Guys that have a limited number of nights on them, there's no reason to buy a brand new car. The car's not wore out yet. And I believe, like, all of our stuff are molly cars, and I think it takes 10 nights to get them cars wore in before you can ever say that they're starting to even be consistent. But then they get better as the life goes on. So I hope that answers your question, Todd. Um, Service is the key in this industry. And that's kind of like I was telling Chad before we got on the phone. That was one of the things that I was kind of, frustrated today. We had to turn some guys down that wanted us to help them do some stuff. And the problem is we don't have, we're so busy that we don't have enough man hours to take on any more work right now. And I'd rather have somebody upset that I couldn't do something than to do a half-assed job at it. So you kind of got to respect people for that too.
I only built 8 race cars, and I realized that wasn't for me. But you have to understand, just like you said, when they get that many cars out there, they give you a good baseline, and you have to stay around that base, whether it's a Shaw, a Rage, a Lethal. I mean, these guys, they have these baselines dialed in, and I talk to all these companies, and I get to talk to a lot of people, and what you said about getting off track. I mean, it's easy to make a bunch of adjustments and lose track of where you are. So It boils down to your program and believing in your chassis and believing in what you're doing as a race team, and having a good attitude. I mean, so much of it is that. Back in the day, I blamed one of the chassis, and it was in my head that it was junk, but there was guys winning in them. Well, it was me, clearly. It wasn't the chassis. It was what I was doing to the chassis. So don't lose faith in whatever you got there, Todd. Not. I'm a big believer in believing in your program, and having a good attitude and a good notebook and really focusing on what you're doing, because I did it wrong for so many years.
Well, I had a customer that was in there today, and they ran real well this weekend, and they've not been very consistent, this year like they had been in years past. And I kept asking him, I said, if you want us to go through the car, bring it over, we'll do whatever we can do. I'll do whatever I can do to help you, blah, 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 blah. But anyways, finally today, he said, I think we kind of got back to the basics, because he said, when we went down south this winter and was racing down in Arizona, he says, we kind of got off on a little bit of a different angle, he said, and we kind of got back to basically what we were running about this time last year. They said the car was pretty good. And I said, you got to try new things, because you never know, there's something that can be fast. But, well, once it's not working, like you said, going back to a baseline is good. Nick, lacking drive off the corner, what could I do to help that? Well, Nick, that's a long question. Lacking drive off the corner. If the car's tailing out on you, that's a good indication you got too much trail in it. You need to put some lead in it. Depending on what kind of car you have, a 4-link car, you can adjust the 4 links on it. Not really knowing, Nick, what you actually have, it's a little hard to give you much more than that. Lead and trail thing is a good thing for if the car's tailing out on you coming off the corner. If the car's getting in good and rolling through the middle good, then you just need to make some small chassis adjustments. Trailing arm angles would help get the car off the corner better. That type of stuff would be good. And sorry, I can't give you more information, but that's all I can think of with the limited information, that not knowing what chassis or what kind of car you're actually running. Have a bent axle tube. Axle still slides in and out easily. Handling has gone away. Towed out 5/16 of an inch at the rotors. Holy moly. That would be 3/4 of a mile. Yeah, that old adage about, the people, Randy, that's just a great topic, because that's one of my topics that I've watched enough race cars, and I've watched enough people make changes to their car to know when a guy's got a bent axle tube. And actually, if you went down the pits and say your local racetrack has 75 cars, I'll bet you if you went down the pits and you measured every one of them, there's more than likely 40 of them have a bent axle tube. I mean, it's one of the easiest things that can get bent, and it's the easiest to overlook, because we were always taught back in the day that if the axles move in and out, the rear end can't be bent. Well, now there's enough play, and the axle sizes have gotten smaller, and there's enough things coming in and out. We've had some that have been over a 1/2 inch bent, and the axle still went in and out perfectly fine. But you could physically look at it and see that it was bent. So yeah, 5/16 of an inch is a lot. A 1/16 of an inch, I would probably straighten. I mean, honestly, that it's hard to tune around, because what happens is you try to tune around it, then all of a sudden you get a push in the middle of the corner, and you just can never get the car to be consistent the whole way through. Nick, I don't know if I can actually give you a lot more information. One of
Hey,
the questions, if you want to, if you could tell me what type of a car, if you're running a modified or a sport mod or a hobby stock or a stock car, so I know what rear suspension you're talking about. Rubber biscuit pull bar. If you run the biscuits too long, will the car still have forward traction? Then loose it really quick. I have no travel indicator. Well, it's possible. I mean, I would definitely believe that if you had any traction, and I should let you actually answer that one, Chad.
it's a solid pull bar is the most traction. So if the biscuits fade and the pull bar gets stiff, it's more traction. But we're trying to time out that 2 seconds of the lap. And I don't know what you got for a bar. We got a travel indicator that I think you can adapt to just about any bar. But getting some data and knowing what you got going on, or I don't know whose pull bar you got. If they got a lot of nights on it, like 15 nights, I'd say you probably need to put a round of biscuits in it. Uh, the first part of the year can be hard on the pull bars because the tracks generally have more grip and you're going to travel it and beat them pucks up more. I don't know if you're a IMCA or UMP but yeah, definitely the biscuits are a lot of work depending on what kind of biscuit it is. So maintenance is key on that. And if you feel like you've lost traction, that's probably something you need to look at. Okay, you said Shaw pull bar. I don't know. I assume that's a big biscuit one, the big biscuit Shaw style. That them biscuits should last quite a while. I don't know how many nights you got on it, but maybe it's just a simple way that you need to just put some biscuits in it, and you can. Yeah, that's kind of a weird build pull bar, so I don't know if our travel indicator will work on that, but you can take a piece of string and duct tape it on one tube and take a piece of string and duct tape it on the other with some Sharpie marks and then measure how much it stretches that string. That's kind of a poor man's travel indicator, like I used to do back in the day on things that we didn't have travel indicators made for. So uh, I would probably put a round of biscuits in it, though, depending on how many nights you got on it.
And if worse come to worse, putting a couple turns of preload in it could very well at least let you know if that helps it. That's telling you that the biscuits are starting to go south.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you put a little more preload in it and the car feels a little bit better, yeah, the biscuits are getting ready to go. If they're not gone already, they're ready to go. Mike's got a question. Which is the better pull bar, the Wehrs pull bar or the BHE pull bar? We get that asked a lot. We sell both of them. They both win races. Um, I wouldn't be afraid to put ours in one of our cars, and I wouldn't be afraid to put one of the Chads in. They both. The concept is which is better. It just depends on. They both work very similar in the make. In theory, I think they're equal, in my personal opinion. Now, if you call our shop, they're going to probably try to sell you one of ours. Now, if you call Chad, more than likely he's going to probably sell you one of his. But they're still, in my opinion, they're both pretty darn good pull bars. And the thing about them is both the pull bars don't use up biscuits very much. They run a spring, and the spring you can get a tremendous, unless you start coil binding that spring, which you shouldn't. I mean, if you're getting enough movement on that coil bind and you're coil binding a spring, you've got big problems somewhere else. But if you've got that much movement, like I said, unless you coil bind the spring's going to last forever. So the biggest thing about the two that have in common is longevity. And that's one of the things that a racer wants, is something he doesn't have to work on every other night or whatever the case is and change biscuits every so often. Now, it's just like any other pull bar, both of them, they will require a certain amount of maintenance to be up to snuff like they should be. And you can't forget about that. I mean, it's not something you just bolt on the car and come back 20 nights later and, well, I wonder if that's still working. I mean, it's going to need some grease. It's going to need a little bit of loving care. Matt, what would you say would be acceptable amount of air pressure gain in a right rear tire? IMCA slick car. Gosh, if you're running regular air, which you should be running nitrogen, if you're running regular air, if you're getting over 3 pounds of air gain, your driver's sliding the car too much. You're going to find that air gain will come from the car actually, and people think it's because you're spinning the tire. That's not the case whatsoever. Air gain will actually come from working the sidewall. So if the driver sets the car at the flag stand and it's kind of one of them three-wheel jockeys that wants to load on the right rear, and the right rear is underinflated by 3 or 4 pounds, that right rear is going to probably be 8 pounds more, because the sidewall, working the sidewall is where these tires gain their heat, the majority of their heat. And if the right rear tire is gaining heat, that means it's not hooked up. So it's the old adage, like Kelly Shyrock always used to say, feed the heat. If you got a tire that's got a lot of heat in that right rear, you need more bite in that right rear tire. Randy, what is the most you can get away with?
As the rear end bent, I think you hit that with the 16th.
I wouldn't. I mean, a 16th at the rotors. I wouldn't more than that. It depends on where it's been at too. Okay, say for example, if your right rear is bent where it's towed out, then you got to get that a 16th of an inch to square. If it's bent where the right rear is towed in, you could probably get by with an 1/8 of an inch, because having a right rear towed in, I don't think that'd be all that bad of a deal, because with, when you get 3 inches of movement on your left rear, it's not going to notice that. But if it's towed out at all, it's always going to try to be loose. And then when you try to tighten it up, the thing will get pushy and it'll still be loose. Matt Ruff, I don't want to hear you're too busy, Bob. I'm 10 miles from you now. Well, Matt, I don't know exactly what that means, but if you're looking for a job and you can weld and you can build bumpers, I'll see you in the morning. Because evidently you must know where I'm at. So you got my address. Now, I don't usually get there till 9 o'clock, so you might have to talk if you get there before that, you'll have to talk to Bobby or Rocky, but I'll usually be there by 9. Aaron, can you touch on mounting location of the chain limiter on the axle tube and how moving it in or out would affect the car? And is it the same effect on both sides? Go ahead, Chad.
So where you put the clamp on the left rear is way more important than the right rear. The right rear is not going to have that much of an effect as far as picking the tire up off the track and losing traction. The left rear is critical. We like to go into the bell. If you think of that, wherever that clamp is on that axle, that's kind of your pickup point. So when you have that farther out towards the end, it takes less force to pick that tire up off the track. So we like to move that in, and as the right rear is going up and the left rear is going down, it also gives us more travel movement at the tires. So it gives you more, let's call it wedge or traction put in the car as the car is getting to the middle of the corner. So we like that to be slid in to the bell as far as we can get to get the most traction out of it.
Brian, with an IMCA modified on a super slick low grip racetrack, is there a crossing point with running a stiff right rear spring to build load or a soft right rear to go for body roll? Well, keep in mind the stiffer spring gets the weight. So in other words, when you get roll to the right rear, if you've got a stiffer spring, it's going to load that tire more and it's going to give you more side bite. If you've got a softer spring, the spring is going to absorb the roll and not actually load the tire more. Now, coming off the corner, the softer spring's probably going to give you a little bit more traction because, of course, it's not loading that right rear tire as much. But getting into the corner and through the middle, that stiffer spring is going to give you more side bite. So it kind of depends on what your car's actually wanting, what you want out of your race car. And it's kind of driver specific. I mean, some drivers aren't real fond of a stiff right rear spring, like a 250, 300-pound spring. It's a little bit more, how would I say, sensitive. The soft spring's going to be less sensitive, but it's also going to put less load on that right rear tire. Don says that he's got a Shaw pull bar, but you already seen that. Whoops. Do you have a right rear bird cage with the option to lock and unlock to the axle tube?
Yes, we do. So our standard bearing cages, we have a clamp that you bolt the block to the side of the cage, and then you put the clamp ring next to it, and then you unbolt and bolt 3 bolts to the suspension cage through the clamp to lock and unlock, so you can go from 4-link to 2-link. So that's a 200-17CL. If you look that up on the website there, it'll give you a picture of it and show you how it works. But yeah, we do have an option to lock up our bearing cages.
Alex wants to know, he has an IMCA stock car. What would you recommend for how much shaft to have out on the left rear shock? Will too much hike, sorry, I gotta move my cursor. Will too much hike cause a push from the apex off? It's possible, because you're getting a lot of trailing arm angle, and so now all of a sudden it's getting more traction up off the corner. So you definitely that might be part of it. If you're getting a lot of roll to the right rear and you're running a stiff right rear spring, it's very possible that there's a side bite deal. But if it's off the corner, it's definitely getting too much hike. Shaft wise, it's a 9-inch shock, and I don't exactly remember what IMCA stock car rules actually are now on that shock rule or whatever. But with a 9-inch shaft, I'd recommend having 6 inches. Well, on the stock car, you'd probably want 5 out and 4 in. I'm sorry, other way around. 4 out and 5 in, so that you get the roll without it trying to lift the left rear. £3,000 car, 3-link, Wehrs open style bushing bar, 7/80 Duro bushings. Bar is set at 8 1/8 inches and travels 1 1/8 inches. The car lacks traction at the end of the phase, but of phase 3, but has a ton of traction at the center from the center to the end of the straightaway. Would a spring bar be better suited for my application?
I don't think the bar matters. I think you maybe have it either too not enough angle, so I'd put a little bit more angle in it to time out that traction just a little bit different. If the bar is too flat, you'll have less instant and you'll have more at the end of the straightaway. So tuning the length maybe and the angle of that is probably going to dial that right in. The puck bar is definitely a good bar. I wouldn't be afraid to tune that in. Maybe just a little bit less preload, going 1 1/4 inches, but I think location's more important tuning wise than the actual bar itself most tracks. So I would give it a little bit more angle and see if you can get that phase 3 dialed in.
Oh, darn, Matt, I thought you were looking for a job, but you actually want us to set your car up. Well, I'm hoping that things will look a lot more positive in a week. We weren't expecting the results from Brit Speedway last Monday night to cause the problems that they caused. But it destroyed one race car, which we've got to build a new one for, which luckily that's going to give us a little time because I can't get the car from GRT for a couple, 3 weeks. But we weren't intending on putting a stub and a tail on another car because of that particular situation up there. So it kind of caught us far behind. Now trying to make excuses, and then I've got a guy from Michigan that was supposed to pick up his car today. Now he's not going to probably be here till later in the week, and we're just out of shop room. We've got more cars in there than we've got room to actually work right now, so the boys are getting antsy. In fact, I'm actually going to take 2 new cars to the storage shed or to our storage center tomorrow, so we have a little more room in there. Our shop's not that big, and it works very well when we can time things accordingly. But this time of the year, it's unexpected. Any suggestions on Adriel? Adriel wants to know any suggestions on measuring lining things back up when switching from a 9-inch to a quick change in a B mod. Do you know what that reads?
Well, I think you're talking about when you get the cages on the switching from a 9-inch rear end to the quick change rear end. So obviously you need to get your left to right location on the cages correct. Assuming you have basically a twin width of the rear end, make sure the cages are in the same spot. On that kind of car, on a B mod, we like to set our cages level, and then you have the pinion angle built into it. So if you're running 8 degrees of pinion angle, the cages are level at ride height. So then when you make a bar adjustment, you just have to adjust the trailing arm to get the levels level, and then you automatically know your pinion angle is going to be right. As far as a J-bar, I assume you are a J-bar in the front and not a rear panner bar. So the pinion on a quick change is higher?
1.25 inches lower.
1.25 inches lower than your 9-inch. So reference where you're running the J-bar and then adjust accordingly with the quick change. So if you were at the center line on a Ford, you're 1.25
inches above.
1.25 inches above on the quick change.
Yep.
So that's really the main things, so that you get your bars towed correctly on the rear end and get your pinion angle right, and then get your panner bar in the right location when you're switching from a 9-inch to a quick change.
Jim's got a question, and this is actually a very good question. When scaling, have all gas shocks? He has all gas shocks. Do you unhook all, or which ones do you need to be disconnected? I always unhook my 2 front shocks. Biggest reason because the right front's got a lot of 0 point usually in it, and if you don't unhook it, it'll make scaling job last for freaking ever, and it'll be inconsistent because you don't know what the shock's doing. So I always unhook the front shocks. Rear shocks, I don't worry about the right rear because the right rear usually is a low gas pressure shock. It doesn't have a lot of valving in it, so it's pretty neutral and it doesn't really affect it too much. The left rear, you can either leave it hooked or unhooked. What it will do, if you have a left rear gas shock, like say if your chassis manufacturer says you want to have 60 pounds of bite, with the gas shock hooked up, you would want 80 pounds because the gas shock will add 20 pounds of bite to the car in a static mode. Now, once the car hits the racetrack, it has no clue what that is. The gas shock has no effect on the scaling part of it whatsoever. So like I said, normally we'll unhook the 3 of them. And then, and that, like with an A mod, we've got to keep the right rear hooked up anyway. If you're running a stock car, or if you're running a sport mod, Doesn't take that long to unhook all of them. If you do unhook all of them, it makes the scaling process go faster. How much static load should you have on the right rear when it's drive versus when the track has bite with soda modified? Well, yeah, I'm not completely sure how to answer that one either, as far as I don't have an answer to that question. I'm sorry, Al. I don't actually change right rear static load, to be honest. I worry more about the left rear load than I do the right rear load. Um, yeah, I don't actually, I set that where I want it when I scale the car, and then I just adjust the left rear. And actually, I don't adjust the left rear a whole lot. You put more load in the left rear, it's going to make the car freer getting in. You take load out, it's going to tighten it up a little bit. One of the things that I tell people, if you decide you need a little bit more load on the left rear, make sure you put a little bit more panhard bar into it too, so that you don't lose that side bite that you will lose. But sorry, I can't actually answer that question on that right rear. Sounds like I need to study up on this right rear load thing.
Well, it's kind of what you touched on. I mean, taking load away, you're thinking you're going to take load away to get grip when the track gets slippery, but you're going to gain attitude, but you're actually going to spin the tires. You're going to roll, but you're not going to transfer. So
Right.
that's why I think a common problem when it gets dry is to take rounds out of the right rear, and I think you hurt the right rear
Yeah.
because you
And if
take
anything, sometimes when it gets dry, you need to actually put them in.
what turns into the right rear to get
Yeah.
heat deal and get more traction on that right rear tire.
Yep. I would definitely agree with that. Joey, now I don't remember
I think
Joey's.
this is pull. He was asking. We were talking about pull bars and adding angle there and tuning
Okay.
that one. This is about having too much angle, and yes, you can have too
Oh
much
yeah.
on the pull bar. You'll have too much instant, and you won't be able to carry it down the straightaways. So definitely a tuning tool there is the angle for sure.
15 degrees is a very neutral angle.
Common. Yeah.
You get much above 18 degrees, and the car is going to be a rocket ship instantly, and it'll go away quickly. If you take less, you get down to 10 degrees, it might be a little lazy on coming off the corner, but it'll have traction later down the straightaway.
Yeah, short track versus super speedway. Short track more angle, super speedway half mile long or less angles. So
Yep. Okay. Brian, on the IMCA modified, how much right rear hike do you recommend? I shortened my right rear chain by a hole in the Weir's quick adjust limiter and noticed that when I got on the throttle in the corner, on the corner, it would pull the chain tight and give me a ton of forward traction. Well, I think there's a lot to that. That's kind of what we've talked about in the past, that you can tighten the chain down on the right rear and it definitely gives you traction. It might make it pretty sensitive, but what I recommend is I'd rather run a little bit more initial bar angle and limit the bar angle so that like you just said, Brian, what you just did, because I think you'll get more traction that way. Limiting the chain, the only problem, like I said, if you get on a choppy racetrack or a rough racetrack, it can get a little jerky and it'll hook that right rear tire a little too quick sometimes and make it lose the nose. But that's pretty common. Shortening that chain up on that right rear will definitely give you more traction off the corner.
yeah, he added there on that second one where he added a line there about skating on entry, and that's definitely when you tie that right rear down, then you go into the corner and you let out of the gas, and that right rear chain gets tight. On decel, it's trying to pick the right rear tire up, and then that's how you skate on entry. So Right rear chain's touchy subject.
Okay. Well, nice to know you're watching there, Pat. I appreciate it. I hope you had a good time. I hope you had a good time up in 141. Oh, hell, I bet he had a great time. You guys had an extra night to not have to worry about races.
What's better than one camping trip with Pat? 2.
Tim's wanting to tell you, Ryan, that you don't have enough travel. Alex, how important? Oh, we're actually over our time. Sorry. Alex, how important do you think it is to have an X on a stock car chassis? Car currently doesn't have one. What changes could I expect if I added one? Well, in my opinion, an X is a very important part to have in a race car because, once again, without that X, the chassis is flexing quite a bit. And the more flex that you have, the more it actually takes it off the. And Billy, you're the last question we're going to do because we are going to be out of time. But anyway, the X is going to give you a little bit of rigidity. It's going to keep what it's going to do is it's going to keep the right front hooked with the left rear and keep traction in the car. So I think an X is definitely a good idea. In my opinion, though, I wouldn't make it a perfect X. I would stagger it slightly, which means that the right front to the left rear would be one solid piece. My left front to my right rear would be 2 pieces, and they would be about 6 inches apart where they meet on the piece that went from the right front to the left rear. What's a good starting point on angle of the upper trailing arms on a metric car? 5 degrees. From what I have seen, actually 5 degrees is probably a lot. 2 degrees is probably more realistic. With what the rules allow us to do on those metric cars, it's somewhat limited. If you can adjust it and go differently from what the rule, depending on what your rules state, 5 degrees wouldn't hurt you at all, but 2 degrees is pretty common. Billy, what ideas do you have to make the brakes not so sensitive on a hobby stock with a floater? Well, and you guys are kind of limited in what you can run for a brake pedal. Or I don't even remember now if they opened that rule up and allow you guys to have a better brake system or not. Biggest thing would be is there's no rule on what brake pads that you can actually run. So, having a higher quality brake pad would probably be a big advantage. And like, as an example, like with our modifieds and our sport mods, we run a soft compound on the right front, a medium compound on the left front, and then heavy compounds on the rears. Now, I know some of the hobby stock guys that, and if you have a question on that, feel free to give Brandon or Braden a call tomorrow at the shop. He's run a hobby stock a lot more and might have some more tips on what he did with his brakes when he was running a hobby stock. But Braden would be the guy to talk to if you call BHE. All right, guys. Excellent questions tonight. Great group, man. I was very impressed. We had a lot of questions. I'm going to have to study up on my right rear loads and some more things for 2 weeks from now. Actually, it's going to have to be 3 weeks from now because in 2 weeks, it's going to be the 4th of July. So we're going to be on vacation. Well, I won't be on vacation. I'll be at a race someplace. I'm not sure exactly where I'll be at a race someplace, but I'll be at a race. In fact, I don't even know what the specials are. Come to think about it, I'll have to look at that tomorrow. But I'm sure I'll be at a race somewhere on the 4th of July. That's always a fun time, and I always enjoy going to the races there. We get an extra day of racing, and so that'll be a lot of fun. Or I might just take the day off and hang out with the grandkids or something fun. I don't know. It'll be exciting whatever we do. So we'll actually see you, or we will talk to you guys on the 11th, July 11th. It'll be 3 weeks from today.
How about the prizes?
Oh, yeah. we were going to draw some, since it's our 60th episode. I'm glad you mentioned that, Chad. I forgot all about that. Since it's our 60th episode, Chad's going to draw some names. You explain how you're going to do that. And what I'll explain is we're going to have 5 Race Tech Info shirts, and Chad's going to have 5 Wehrs Machine shirts, and he'll explain to you how we're going to do that.
We're just going to throw all the names in a hat and randomly draw 10. So we'll, my marketing people will reach out for the 5 Wehrs Machine, and Bob's marketing people will reach out for the 5 RTI ones. So thanks everybody for the questions. Another awesome night.
Oh yeah, one last thing. 43 days to the Harris Clash. Can't forget that. 43 days. It's going to be here before we know it. So nice questions, guys. You guys all have a great night, and we'll see you in 3 weeks. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.